In less than 10 years, colon and rectal cancers may be the top cancer killer among 20 to 49-year-olds. This is crap. Fight colorectal cancer believes advocacy will lead to research, and research will lead to a cure. They need your support. Join their community of relentless survivors and champions by signing up for Climb for a Cure. Your steps will be counted toward their collective goal of taking 1 million steps and raising $1 million for the cause. Find a climb near you by visiting fightcrc.org/climb. That's fightcrc.org/climb.
Odyssey now has hundreds of new exclusive music stations for you to discover your new summer soundtrack.
Get moving with worthy workouts for a cardio sesh fueled by today's top artists.
Hanging with your crew? Throw it back with Picnic Party for old school jams for your cookout.
Or sail away with Odyssey's new yacht rock station, Jugger Yacht.
There are hundreds of new exclusive stations to check out today.
For summer barbecues,
road trips,
or relaxing poolside.
For every mood, every interest, every passion. By Odyssey. Brought to you in part by Macy's and Geico.
We are joined now by Tony Gwynn Jr., who is the San Diego Padres TV analyst, played himself as well. And the Padres, the NOS is just absolutely stacked. The Padres are 60-45, one of the funnest teams, if not the funnest team out there. A run differential that's approaching plus 100. We have a lot to get into. Tony, welcome to the show. How are you today, buddy?
Thank you guys for having me, and I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Oh man, you sound like your pops a little bit too. We're doing great. I listen, Chris. I told you, I really want to tell you this. That first of all, I've had pictures of your pops growing up on my wall. I know you've heard this from so many people, but this is the first time I've had a chance to talk to you. And whether it's the interview all those years ago that your dad did with the great late Ted Williams. Books I've read about hitting, videos I've watched about your pops, what he did in college at San Diego State. I told Teak years ago he was drafted as a point guard. People don't know that. Your dad is one of my favorite all-time athletes. Condolences much after the fact for sure, but more of a celebration. I have so much love for your pops, and I wanted to tell you that, man.
I certainly appreciate it. I hear it a lot, but I don't get tired of hearing it. And he was certainly one of a kind.
Humble guy. I mean, for all the accolades, roll out of bed and hit 340, 350. Just a humble guy. Like, let me ask you, before we get into the Padres, my little guy's 6, and a lot of kids out there, their parents have kids that play ball, softball, baseball. Like, you are blessed with speed. You are born with certain things. Hand-eye coordination. Can you quantify how much better your dad's was than pretty much anybody that's ever picked up a baseball bat in the history of the world?
Well, first, I really wish that it was like within the DNA that hand-eye kind of, because that would have made my career a heck of a lot longer. But
I got you.
My dad they grew up. Him and his brothers grew up, in the backyard hitting little softballs, and they were like these little tiny pellets. And he believed that kind of set him up in terms of his hand-eye coordination. It was elite. My dad, I remember a story. My first year in minor leagues, Prince Field and I are in the same team, and he came in to talk to us one day, and he was telling the story about how you should be able to see, like on a changeup, the full hand covering the baseball, and you could just see kind of the confusion set in the room. And I kind of tapped him on his shoulder. I was like, "Hey, Dad, I don't think anybody in here sees the baseball like that." And It just, to me, it spoke volumes to how different he was in terms of the hand-eye coordination you talked about.
Great stuff. Go ahead, T.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
No, it is. When you have an elite skill like that, you use it to your advantage, and your pop certainly did that. Now, what do you make of all of the movement that's happened at this trade deadline? BT and I, every year, we've been doing this show for, 8 years now. It's going on 9 years. And every year at the trade deadline, we're like, oh, it's going to be amazing. Look, this team could do this team could do that, this team could do this, and and then nothing happens. And we're sitting back like, oh, well, that was quiet. This year, a lot happened. And I think it's great for baseball. BT and I were talking about that earlier. What do you make of all of this? Especially, the Dodgers, who are right down the street from you guys, picking up one of the elite pitchers in baseball, and Max Scherzer.
I think there are a bunch of factors, right? I think a lot of teams kind of stood pat in the offseason, and really it opened the door for the Padres to have the offseason they did. They weren't competing against some of the teams that have higher payrolls and can go out and afford to spend money.
Yeah.
I think teams wanted to kind of wait and see what this season would look like, how attendance would be when it picked up. And I think they got their answer, and I think so many teams this year are in buy mode, and it's such a competitive league overall that I think it opened the door for this. And I don't take lightly the fact that there's a collective bargaining agreement at the end that could reset all of this when it's all said and done. So I just think a lot more teams were in position to make moves at the break, and for once, it was actually some action. Usually we look at the other sports, football, basketball, for trade deadline action. Mm-hmm. Baseball is usually, as you guys said, really slow. But this year I think it's been different. And the sellers, the teams that had to sell, they made out in a big way.
There's no doubt. I mean, all these names are incredible. We're talking to Tony Gwynn Jr., San Diego Padres analyst. And Tony, of course, played himself. He was in the bigs. He played about 8-9 years in the show and a terrific college player, played for his pops. And just the lineage here is outstanding, because I'm doing the show here, Tony. And yesterday, Tiki was out. For an hour, I'm talking about how Scherzer is on the Padres. So, I mean, it's amazing. Like, at what point did you know that he was no longer on the Padres? What happened behind the curtain?
I don't know exactly what happened. Here's my guess. I think GMs are smart. They know who to get stuff out to. They know who not to. And I think Mike Rizzo might have pulled a fast one. I think he let that information get out. I have no idea if this is true, but my guess is he leaks that or somebody leaks it, and it gets out, and that gives the other teams an opportunity to give their best deal after. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that ends up being what happened, because for a lot of people, it was pretty much on the 5-yard line, it sounded like, in terms of that deal being done. And then for it to change in the manner in which it changed, it didn't just change for Max Scherzer. All of a sudden, Trey Turner and Max Scherzer are now going to Washington. And I just think I think Mike Rizzo or somebody in that organization was able to use that rumor to their benefit and get the best deal that they could.
Now, for those who might not, I was going to say T. Rizzo's the GM of the Nats. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, in the West is just, it's so stacked right now. I mean, you look at across all of baseball, and there's no 3 better teams in vying position for the crown than the Giants and the Dodgers and the Padres. And the one team that we kind of worried that was just kind of overshooting their expectation was the Giants, but they're hanging on, and actually probably we underestimated them. What do you see with their squad?
I think at this point in the year, when you've been in the locker room and you get a bunch of dudes who start to believe that they're as good as they're playing, it's a dangerous thing. And I think we're at that point now. We're in August. It would take an absolute collapse for the Giants not to be at the top of this division, I think. This team is gotten better. You're going to get Chris Bryant to add to that offense. He's versatile, so he can play a whole bunch of different spots. But prior to that move, the thing I think the Giants did so well is they played baseball that matched their roster. Yeah. They're one of those teams, if you start a righty and you bring a lefty in, they'll flip their whole lineup. They'll bring a whole bunch of righty-ins to match that. And it's worked for them all season. You got to give a lot of credit to some of the veterans who a lot of people thought were washed. They're having terrific seasons, and then that pitching staff has been, I think, the biggest surprise. You still got Johnny Cueto, who I think is a huge wild card to have on that rotation, and Gonsolin has and some of these other guys. Gausman has pitched so well for him at the top of that rotation. It's hard not to believe that they're for real. I for one, think they are.
Yeah, no, I think you have to believe that they are, given how deep we are. And you look at the Padres, who are sitting third, not that far back, obviously. And the question becomes, you guys spent so much money to get to this point of relevance, and I think I like it. I love it. I think it creates a lot of interest out west. But with the 8th highest payroll for a team that you even mentioned, it's small market and hasn't typically done this. Is this sustainable? Obviously this year it is, but is this sustainable in the long run?
It depends on what your long run is. I think over the next 5 years, I think it is sustainable. You have a lot of guys under team control. You do have the big contracts, and they'll have to be, the bill will have to be paid. But you got a lot of guys locked in for multiple years. So if it's not this year, they're still going to have these same guys in place next year to make the same run. And here's the thing I don't want people to kind of overlook. The Padres made more moves than anybody else did during the offseason to put them in this position. They still, even with all the trades that have happened today, they still have a very good team that can go out and compete and beat both the Dodgers and Giants. But the guys that they made trades for, specifically Blake Snell, is going to have to pitch the way Blake Snell has pitched. And that just hasn't been the case. He's been very inconsistent this year. And that also goes for you, Darvish, who over the last 3 or 4 starts hasn't looked like you. Those guys get back on pace, and we saw the performance from Joe Musgrove last night. You got a really good starting 3 with a fantastic bullpen, and I think this team is plenty good enough to still go out and compete, even with the trades that have been made.
Tony, you know what I wanted to ask you, and I said it on the show yesterday, and growing up in the house that you did, being a ball player yourself, doing the games now as an analyst here, I loved you to either, rubber stamp this or maybe say, well, I don't know. In my opinion, all right, and certainly aware of the Padres and the Tigers in '84, the Padres and the Yankees in the late '90s when your Pops went deep in the Bronx, and the A's back to back in the '70s, and the Giants with 3 titles in the 2010s, and I get all that. But to me, Tony, right now, from top to bottom, including the A's and what Ohtani's done, and even the little Seattle Mariners, I don't think West Coast baseball has ever been quite this potent. Is that a fair statement?
I think collectively, yes. You mentioned the runs that the A's had where they were dominant. They were the best team in baseball, but they were really the only ones out west doing it like that. Right now, there's no doubt it's been a long time since all of the teams, especially in the National League West, have been this good. Like it's hard to remember a time. It's usually maybe 2 at best that are playing this type of baseball where you look across the entire landscape of baseball and you say, wow, these are still probably the best 3 teams in the league. I mean, maybe you put the White Sox in there too because they certainly have had a heck of a year this year. But I would agree. Right now, this is as potent as West Coast baseball has been really up and down the coast.
When we were talking about your dad, I actually probably wanted to slip this in and I forgot, so I want to circle back to it. Who are your favorite players growing up? Like, were they all Padres? I mean, what poster did you have? Who did you try to emulate? Who were your guys growing up, besides your dad, of course?
I loved Barry. I loved Ken Griffey Jr. Obviously, that was like the guy for everybody.
Oh yeah.
But as a kid that got to like be on the field and watch these guys up close, I loved guys like Ozzie Smith. I loved when Dion was playing the game of baseball. I enjoyed watching him run the bases. I loved watching really good athletes on the field. But for my money, it was always guys like Barry Bonds getting a chance to watch him conducting at bat, and then have an opportunity to share a field with him. When I was a rookie in Milwaukee, it was like a kid in the candy store. I can't even explain it. Those are the type of guys that I enjoyed watching, though.
That's great. When you look at a guy on your squad like Fernando Tatis, who is he seems like he has a chance to be one of the faces of baseball. Like, what do you take away from, one, his journey, and then 2, how good he can be for how long?
I truly believe he's just scratching the surface. Like, he's doing everything, and he's still a guy that chases out of the zone. And because he's so athletic, sometimes it works for him. And he's hitting around 300, so it's not like he's up there just giving at bats away. So he's still learning himself at the plate. But I think the thing that I enjoy about Fernando the most is he recognizes how important it is to be an ambassador of the game. I see him out here. I'm here early, and I see him come out. I see him sign autographs when nobody's watching. I see him, bring kids on the field when nobody's watching. He respects the game because he grew up in it.
Yeah.
But I think he embraces, unlike a lot of guys, he really embraces being the face. I mean, I don't know too many 22-year-olds who are talking about having a statue when it's all said and done. But because he embraces it, I think his love for the game kind of shows through. It's very easy to attach yourself to him, and I think that's why no matter where the Padres go, it's like a rock star. You see so many fans out there, and they're their dreadlock wigs or whatever it is. They're out there wanting to be like Fernando Tatis Jr., and he recognizes it and he embraces it.
He's so vibrant. I mean, the skill's obvious, but yeah, it just drips out of him. Everything he does is just exciting and fun. I can only imagine being 7 years old and watching him and him being my guy. It's almost like Ricky Henderson, hyped up like a Ricky 2.0. But what was surprising to me, Tony, we're talking to Tony Gwynn Jr. here, Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio, Padres TV analyst, former big league player as well. When he hurt his shoulder, and then they implored him to come back and with his follow-through go from one hand to two hands to alleviate some of that burden on the one shoulder. I mean, he's done it seamlessly, and to me, I mean, that just speaks to his aptitude and his familiarity with his body. Like, the guy's kind of changed his swing, and it hasn't impacted anything.
You know, real quick, you mentioned Ricky Henderson. He was another guy I grew up watching, loving to watch play.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think that was a concern for everybody. When he hurt his shoulder, I think a lot of people only could think of Cody Bellinger, right? Having that shoulder pop out wasn't the same the rest of that series, had to have surgery. And so that's where everybody's mind went. But when he came back, I think it was within the first couple of games, he homered. And he did it finishing with two hands. And as you just mentioned, it is very hard to change what you naturally do at the plate and not have an effect on what your swing normally looks like. But it's been seamless for him. He's been able to do it. There's been a few times where, you know, on defense he might dive and he get a little stinger and, you know, it doesn't feel good. But he has been able to adapt through injury. And that's one of the things I think caught a lot of people by surprise. I think we assumed when he had the shoulder injury that it was going to be something that really bothered him the rest of the year. And if you've been watching him every day, you would almost forget that he had that shoulder surgery. That's how good he's been since the injury.
Tony, we're going to let you roll. It's been an absolute honor. I mean, it really has. Just and I know I've just seen some of the tweets coming in from so many people who have said, who's listening to this, we're a national show across the country. Man, Tony sounds like his dad. I think that this has really warmed a lot of people's hearts. I don't know anybody that didn't love your dad, and obviously the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Class act. Really good having you on the show. And all those East Coasters who are complaining about staying up late in October, get used to it because we're going to be watching a lot of West Coast baseball, buddy.
It'll be well worth it. The honor was mine, fellas. I appreciate you having me on.
In less than 10 years, colon and rectal cancers may be the top cancer killer among 20 to 49-year-olds. This is crap. Fight Colorectal Cancer believes advocacy will lead to research, and research will lead to a cure. They need your support. Join their community of relentless survivors and champions by signing up for Climb for a Cure. Your steps will be counted toward their collective goal of taking 1 million steps and raising $1 million for the cause. Find a Climb near you by visiting fightcrc.org/climb. That's fightcrc.org/climb.
Odyssey now has hundreds of new exclusive music stations for you to discover your new summer soundtrack.
Get moving with worthy workouts for a cardio sesh fueled by today's top artists.
Hanging with your crew? Throw it back with Picnic Party for old school jams for your cookout.
Or sail away with Odyssey's new yacht rock station, Jugger Yacht.
There are hundreds of new exclusive stations to check out today.
For summer barbecues,
road trips,
or relaxing poolside.
For every mood, every interest, every passion. By Odyssey. Brought to you in part by Macy's and Geico.